everybody. Welcome to the February 2017 edition of Civil Engineering Today. Today we have Frank DePaola with us. So we want to talk about the future of infrastructure. So for those who don't know Frank is now, he's the Vice President at AECOM, but he has been at MassDOT and he's been at the MBTA and MWRA, Boston Water and Sewer. So you know all infrastructure, everything. So
I've done a lot of it, yes.
So we're going to pick your brain.
Okay.
So we're going to pick your brain. That's our job today.
We have questions, and I was just alluding to one earlier. We were talking about the public-private partnerships, and I'm wondering, I haven't seen too much of that here in Massachusetts, but you said there is a legislation that's passed already.
Yeah, Massachusetts passed legislation, I believe 3 years ago. It was, if memory serves me correctly, it was part of a transportation bond bill. And it authorized the use of public-private partnership as a procurement method in the state of Massachusetts. At the time, they initiated a couple of projects, but they didn't really seem to gain any ground in the private sector. So those were dismissed. But just recently, we saw that the Highway Division of MassDOT has advertised under a public-private partnership type procurement the replacement of the lighting in the Central Artery Tunnel system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, because this show is really for laymen who may not know a lot
Sure.
of terms, can we
Look at this, the
break
backwards
down
thing.
exactly
What
what
exactly
it
is
is,
it?
what it
Well,
exactly is?
and let me
How does it
explain.
work?
Public-private partnerships are where a private entity not only designs and builds a infrastructure asset, and by infrastructure asset I mean a road, a bridge, a lighting system, a sewer or water treatment plant, sewer treatment plant. But they actually finance it, and in most cases they'll also operate and maintain it for a extended period. So what we're trying to do there is leverage private investment and get private equity funds to invest in public infrastructure. So that's the purpose. Now, obviously, whoever's going to make a private investment wants to make some kind of revenue. So
Right.
things like water treatment plants where you sell water by the gallon, or wastewater where you treat water by the million gallons, or roads where you can charge a toll, or lighting, for example,
Yeah,
they'll
that's what
do
I'm
what
wondering about.
well they'll do what they
Yeah, the
call
lighting,
it's
yeah.
availability payments. So what they will say is it's in a layman's term, it's like a mortgage. So you say, give me a lighting system for the Central Artery Tunnel, and how much do I have to pay you per month for 30 years to pay that off?
Oh, so it'd be MassDOT or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts paying back.
Paying back
So it's
through
like-
an availability payment. I assume that's how they're going to go and how the revenue will be generated, but it's not specific yet in the RFI that was recently issued.
So there's interest on that?
Yeah,
on that
there's
loan.
interest, and that's, the interest is the reason why the investors invest.
But I think too is, we've said it before on the show, it's a lot of people seem to take infrastructure for granted. You flip the switch and the light comes on. So I think it's hard for people to realize the value
Sure.
of something like a lighting system. So it's really difficult how that's priced out.
Sure, and it's very interesting because even if it's National Grid or now Eversource doing this, they have to go out and get financing, and there is interest that they pay on the money they borrow to do whatever work they're doing to put up transmission lines, street lights, whatever is done. So whenever you borrow money, you have to pay back that borrowed money with some kind of interest. So even when the state borrows money, and the state goes out and borrows money on an annual basis for public works, they pay interest on that money. So it's not just private P3 jobs where people are paying interest on borrowed money.
Right. But now the company's almost become almost like a bank. So it's it's almost the engineering and construction firm would be a combined entity.
That's correct, and they would also own the operation and maintenance. And I think another good example is the recent tolling project that MassDOT just activated on the Turnpike. That's not a P3, but what they did do in that project is the vendor, who happened to be Raytheon, was responsible for the design and the installation, and they're also responsible for the maintenance for the first 10 years.
Wow, I didn't even know Raytheon did that.
Oh,
Well, and what, that was partly intended to make sure that the quality of the design and the installation was of high quality, because if it wasn't, Raytheon is responsible for any costs of keeping the system up and running, and not the Commonwealth. So that was a good way of not having the Commonwealth assume a burden that they were not used to doing.
Oh, yes, definitely. We've talked about that when the water main breaks is when you hear from the public.
Right,
Right.
They have no idea what a water main is
Yeah, no.
until it doesn't work.
Correct, correct.
But one thing we were talking about before was about, the difference between just fixing things and smart ways of going about the future of our infrastructure.
That's right. That's right. There's been a lot of talk about state of good repair, and especially when you're talking about roads and bridges and the MBTA, state of good repair. Well, state of good repair is great, but that only maintains the status quo. What we have to be aware of, and there are a couple of efforts ongoing now, is the Metro Boston area, the United States in general, but the Metro Boston area is enjoying a growth, both economic and from a population standpoint. And the population is shifting to more of an urban-centered population. So the expected load on the roads and the MBTA are expected to grow significantly over the next 15 to 20 years. So when you're looking at investments in infrastructure, you don't want to just fix it to maintain it the way it is. You want to anticipate what that additional ridership or load will be, and you want to make sure that these investments address that also.
I agree. I'm glad that other people are hearing this maybe for the first time, but they do need to be aware that we are doing that in Massachusetts. We're trying to be sustainable into the future for quite a while.
Right.
What the city is.
And I want to give the city some credit, because the city has their 2030 program that they've initiated through the Boston Planning and Development Agency in the office of Mayor Walsh. And AECOM actually is part of that effort. And we've been looking at, in certain districts, at what would be the infrastructure needs to support, what the program development will be in certain neighborhoods. Like example, in South Boston, we're looking at if an area that currently is underbuilt gets built out, what would we need? What would be needed for water, sewer, steam, high-speed internet, transportation services, in order to support that amount of development that the city would like to see in that particular area.
That is something I've wondered about recently. I've noticed a lot of development, building development, which is, I'm really geotech, so it's kind of far from me. But I've noticed a lot of building developments going Look up. I've noticed a lot of development going on in the city, and I'm wondering how is, when it comes to the capacity for, say, the sewage system, the water systems, is that something that the developer has to agree to bid on and develop as well at the same time, or is that handled totally separate, like by the city manager? We've actually had Bill Egan on the show, and he's wonderful, and he told us about what's going on in the city of Boston. They're trying to go pedestrian and biking.
Attention to
Sure.
the smart streets.
Yeah, we'll have him on again soon,
Yeah.
hopefully. But I was wondering that, like when it comes to all these building developments, is that part of the program?
It's part of the review of each individual building by the various departments, Boston Water and Sewer, Public Works. In fact, they have the Public Improvement Commission for anything that affects the public way. Fortunately, on the water and sewer side, technology has kept up with the state of the art. So water and sewer mains that were designed in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were designed for water consumption that is significantly higher than it is today. With all the focus on conservation and water-saving devices, the amount of water used by the city of Boston on a daily basis is less than half it was than back in the 50s and 60s. So your water and sewer infrastructure in general have plenty of capacity for the development. In that case, it's just keeping it in good condition so you don't have big water breaks that cause craters in roads and knock out service to people. And that's rehabilitation and replacement of piping and systems in the road, not really having to worry about the size. And on a greater sense, Massachusetts is blessed with a large capacity of water supply for the metropolitan district. So I know for a fact that the water treatment plant has been designed to supply up to 400 million gallons a day, and the average use is around 200 million gallons a day for the whole metro region, not just Boston, but essentially all the communities within Route 128.
And we have great water here.
That's right.
That's right.
We were just
Very
talking
good
about
water.
it.
But but when we're talking in the water world, things seem to be a little bit more stable than when you get into the high tech world, and we just don't know what the world's going to bring us sometimes. Then they have to do some guesswork.
Well, we've talked about on here self-driving cars. I think that's going to be the next big thing, considering there's like 3 or 4 manufacturers who plan to have models on
There
the
are
road by
many,
2020.
Many. So in that plan I was talking about, the 2030 plan and the smart utility vision for the 2030 plan, one of the things that is a core facet of that plan is having a strong Wi-Fi network along all the roadways, which would help facilitate the use of automated vehicles.
That's going to be great.
Yeah,
Can't
it's
wait
gonna
for
be
that.
I think we can't just keep building the roads bigger and bigger. You got to be more efficient with what we got. And who knows, maybe someday we won't even need the roads. Maybe the cars won't touch the pavement. They'll just,
Isn't that nice of you?
Yeah.
But flying cars?
They're coming.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to be walking underneath an accident.
yeah, that accident's going to be bad.
Yeah. But for as far as it's not just efficiency, I mean, I think it's going to open up a world to a lot of people who are disabled or aging and, coming home from wars, missing limbs. I think self-driving cars are great. I have no problem with them, but I have met people who are like, no, I want to drive.
Well, I think
car lovers.
I think the transition is probably what is giving most people pause.
The liability issues.
Yeah, right now with everybody driving versus that transition period where you're in the self-driving vehicle, but you're surrounded by vehicles that aren't. I think that's what's giving people concern. But I think once they can manage that transition period, if we got to the point where all cars were under control of some network, then everybody would be more comfortable. And so they just have to manage that transition from current technology to future technology, which is always the same thing with almost any change in technology as it comes along.
I agree. I don't have a problem with it. I can see people having
Why?
issues.
But I just remember when they were just testing out the cars, like down around Black Falcon Terminal in South Boston, they were interviewing a lot of people that were watching it, and you were getting a good mix. You're getting these people who are watching it in amazement saying this is wonderful, and then you get the
Curmudgeons.
that are just like, we're all gonna die. And it sounds like just the same thing when the subway, we were just talking about that a little bit ago. When the subway system was starting up, people had the same thing, that fear
There
of,
was a
The
fear
race to the
of
underground,
being
yeah.
underground. But
Right.
now it's a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people in Boston couldn't get to work or home or school without the subway system.
right.
I know. I can't even. Of course, I can't imagine life without my smartphone. So I don't know. I'm like addicted to it. I don't know. And do you see the transportation system coming? I noticed that the T now, if I'm running for the train, I can buy tickets online. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. Did you see more of our field engineering moving towards that, where we're going to have apps, or we're going to go to client with apps that they can facilitate and offer to the public?
Yes. The whole idea is to make access to services easier, whether it be through smartphone apps or just facilitating easier use of many systems. And the automated tolling is just the first of it. You don't have to have an Easy Pass transponder. You can drive through and they'll look up your registration and they'll send you a bill. So you don't have to stop at a toll booth and pay a toll and then move on. So that's a very simple example of an advancement. They've already noticed shorter driving times on certain stretches of the turnpike. There's a measured improvement in both traffic and congestion just in the few months since they've converted over.
Yeah, I got the
Yeah.
transponder maybe a couple years ago, and I love it. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah.
great. I rarely use
Yeah.
it, but it's great when I do.
My commute takes me through basically every toll booth, that could have possibly been there. It's really nice not to see them anymore.
Right. All right. It is, and there were instances where especially in like holiday weekends when a lot of people got on the road that didn't have
Yes.
transponders, where even if you had a transponder, you couldn't get to the booth. So, and you had long lines of congestion trying to get through, exit 15, which was the Western tolls, and out at I-84
Yes.
in Charlton. Those were the ones that were almost famous for the
Yes, I've been stuck in
significant
that for like
backups.
Thanksgiving.
So, and
Oh,
I know
yeah.
this past Thanksgiving, that didn't happen.
Really?
So,
That's
Nice.
amazing.
yeah, so. it
No
was-
2 hour, and of course I missed this year's
Yeah,
holidays.
so. But on the T side, I know they're looking at an upgrade. They call it AFC 2.0, and this has been presented at their board meeting several times. Again, going back to what you suggested, trying to have an open format so people don't have to have just a Charlie card. That you can use a smartphone, you can use a credit card, you can use
Oh,
several
really?
different means of payment to access the system, to make it much more convenient.
Would it jump from city to city? Would this be something you could?
Well,
be
if you're
registered?
using your
It's
Apple
credit
Pay,
Right.
yes, as long as the other city
Right,
accepts it
has
too.
that
But
would
I
be
know
great.
other big transit agencies are looking at the same thing. So eventually,
It'll be just like the
you'll be
ways
able
of
to
the
go
transponder.
from one to the other, right?
That'll be very good.
That'll be a big plus.
Right.
It'd be nice if these systems all reached far enough.
I
to-
know in Massachusetts, they want to make sure that eventually, not only the T, but all the regional transit authorities, all the BAT buses and the other regional transit authorities have compatibility, so you can go back and forth
That is key.
without
That's
having
definitely
to
key.
have different media.
That is key. And also, this, not to go negative, but we should look at some of the cons, because of course we're always excited by everything that's wonderful. It sounds so good, and we can imagine it being just perfect. But I'm thinking maybe security is an issue. So this is a good area to live in because we have a lot of, techies in this area, between MIT and Harvard, and we have people who code well. I think they have hack night every Tuesday.
Yeah,
What
they have
is-
hackathons down in
Hackathons.
South Boston, right?
Yeah.
On that center there.
So there's people that I think are good with all the computers, but that's going to be a cost, I think, for these agencies. Maybe something, is that being considered when we're talking about it, all this technology, is the cost of the security of the system?
Security is always a key component of any of these systems. I mean, you said we won't talk about the election of Trump. I mean,
Yes.
hacking is as advanced as anything. So one day your coder is tomorrow's hacker. So, but it is something that everybody's aware of and something that everybody is cognizant of as they develop these things, and they do their best to make them as secure as possible.
So that's going to be one component of cost we need to consider as
Of course, there's a cost to it.
we discuss.
I mean, it's with the trains and with everything, everything, you may still be in traffic, you may be held up, but doesn't it seem like now at least somebody knows exactly where you are and somebody's in control?
Wow.
Some people don't like that.
You just said two scary things.
Yes,
I-
people with civil
Make
liberties.
it on the record, I didn't say
Okay,
that.
all right, okay. Read. Civil liberties. There's a lot of people that don't, because if I had my way, we'd have cameras on every corner. I mean, you talk about Texas, they don't believe in big government, but I got a ticket in Texas because I accidentally did not know there was a street sign there. I mean, they have a stop sign. They
Right.
have cameras everywhere,
Yeah,
and
we
we
need
don't,
right. We
and
need
it's
limits.
because of privacy issues, which I don't understand, quite frankly. I mean, I kind of understand. It's like we laugh at the kids who, they have drones come out and police you if you're having a bad thought, and we're laughing because they're 12, and we think, that, of course, it's a great idea. If you're thinking about murdering someone, you die first.
Right.
But it's not
Well,
practical.
I think the concern is on the civil side. So if there was an instance where, let's say, there was a marital problem, and you had your somebody's lawyer wanted to find out if someone else's spouse had been in a certain location at a certain time, if they were
right.
able to subpoena that information and prove that Frank
Things- yeah.
was somewhere.
Things you don't
So
think
those are
about.
the things they're trying to protect. Those are the issues. Those are the concerns. It's not that they're trying to track where people are,
Right.
but they have to safeguard that information so it can't be used for what it's not intended.
But just instantly knowing where there's an accident and where you need
That's
to get
right.
emergency
That's
right.
vehicles out to.
That's right.
And if if you're in the tunnel system and something
Right.
stops
Right.
somewhere in the tunnel, you know exactly what you have to do to fix that problem.
I don't know if a lot of people are aware that Mass Highway has a central office that monitors key locations, both in the tunnel system and at major interchanges.
Oh, I didn't know
where
that.
it's 24/7. They're monitoring, like in the summer, they monitor the Cape Bridges. And actually in the spring, when's the Big E? The Big E's in the
Big
fall.
E is in the fall, right?
They set up cameras and they monitor interchanges around the Big E in the fall so that they can see quickly when something happens and make sure that the state police and emergency services respond to minimize the disruption.
Is this the OCC?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
OCC,
HOC.
right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah,
So
I've
that
been in
is-
there. It's pretty
yeah.
high-tech.
So they have that operation going. The T has a similar operation for running the transit system.
Oh, you have to now.
Right,
And we, as the public, have ways.
right, and we know, right, and people are actually somehow instantly typing in everything that's happening everywhere, whatever
Well,
they see.
usually I carpool, and so somebody's a passenger.
Right, the passengers,
Puts it in.
Yeah.
let's hope they are.
They're pretty accurate, though.
It is,
They say
it is
there's
amazing.
If they say there's a car on the shoulder, there's a car on the shoulder. Yeah.
Well, we need to talk more about P3. Do you know of any projects coming up that you can think of off the top of your head that we can watch for?
Well, the lighting project,
The lighting
that's
project.
been
That's exciting.
initiated. That's what they call a request for letters of interest. That's out.
I think it's going to get watched.
So
I think are the agencies still a little shy about P3?
they are, because it's new for them too. Because
Yes.
they have to give up some control. Because of course, if you're asking a firm to take responsibility for financing, building, and maintaining a
Right.
system, then it's their system. It's not just the DOT system, so they have to give up some control.
In a
So I-
way, it feels like they're upping the ante on the design builds. We just got used to those, and now just
Yeah, now you'll see a lot of design bills are coming out. They seem to be more frequent. That's almost going to become
state.
the state of the art going forward, where the state just says, the state pays for these. It's not a P3, but they say, give us a bridge, give
Right.
us a road, give us an interchange.
So maybe we'll have you on in a couple of years. We can go over what happened.
What happened?
Yeah.
So
What's
actually,
next?
we're running out of time.
Yeah, we are running out of
Oh, really?
time. That's why.
Isn't that crazy?
That was
it's just
quick.
like we just
It is
started.
very
was
quick.
quick.
It is
So
quick. We didn't even ask
I gotta
everything.
plug some outreach things that are coming up. I am really happy to say that in the past month, we've had both the Future City competition and the Model Bridge competition. And Somerville, and I will not say the name of the school right, but a middle school, they are going down to Washington DC.
Really?
Yep, and
thought it was Boy
for
Scout
February
troop.
vacation, and they did an amazing job as the best one. And Lynn Voc Tech won the Model Bridge contest this year.
Wow.
So two public little high schools, both and middle schools won the competitions. It's nice to see.
Have you gone to the
Congratulations.
Future City?
I have not.
Oh,
no.
it's fabulous.
I have seen the model bridge competition, though, I think.
And speaking of the future infrastructure, that we have a poster contest that's going on right now, and it's challenging students to figure out a way to get trains from the north of Boston to the south or the west of Boston. We can call it a north-south rail link, but they can interpret it any way they want. They can look at the maps and come up with any idea that's in their head. We don't want to guide them. We don't want to really tell you what's already been thought of and what the ideas are out there. And May 13th, we're having something called Infrastructure Day in the
Very
Seaport
exciting.
District. And there's going to be all kinds of tours of South Station and the Boston Bridge tours and all kinds of hands-on activities. And authors are going to talk about their books. And we have all kinds of more things being planned. The website for that is www.celebrateinfrastructure.org. And all the other stuff we do is on www.engineeryourfuture.org.
And we're brought to you by
And we're brought to you by, and we are the Boston Society of Civil Engineers.
.org. And you can also,
Thank
we
you,
have a
Frank.
link.
Thanks for coming.
Yes,
coming
thank
You're
you
in.
very
welcome.
much.
Happy to be here.
And thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.